in a sense, a marriage with such intimacy and such relationship. Again, listen to the wonderful way that Heschel describes the intimacy of covenant. When he talks about covenant, he speaks of it, God's chosen sphere is that of covenant. His relationship. Now, would that we get this really proclaimed loud and clear throughout this province, where there's been kind of so many verbal attacks. God's relationship to his partner is one of benevolence and affection. God's life interacts with the life of the people. And Eugene Peterson has this wonderful kind of analogy where he likens covenant to syntax. Now you think back to doing syntax at school. If you were learning French or German or even English, you know, syntax is the study of the elements that make a sentence and how a sentence holds together. Syntax enables us to communicate intelligently, warmly, effectively. You think about it this way, as someone has said, you know, again, Peterson, the Hebrews would no more have considered the covenant 10 commandments as a burden in living a life of faith than a person would call nouns, verbs, and prepositions a burden in carrying on a conversation. In other words, you see, God has created the context and the structure where we can carry on a conversation. And if you look into the history of the Hebrew Bible, look into the history of Israel, sometimes this conversation becomes, you know, an argument. Think about it. God is the God of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Yaakov, Israel, the one who wrestled with God. Think about this. This was a man who wrestled with God right through his life. Where you get Abraham debating with God. Listen, maybe there's 50 good people in there. Do you know, maybe there are 40, maybe there are 30. I mean, where have we come to this kind of polished, programmed, processed kind of evangelicalism where you get everything on a CD and in 40 days you'll have this? Where have we got it to reduce everything to this neat little package? We have lost something of the reality of it and the earthiness of it. This is what, you know, coming back to the Hebrew mind does. It's enormously liberating because it takes us off the tightrope. And when you honestly read your way through the scripture, you get the psalmist wrestling with God. You get Job wrestling with God. You get this honesty. Why? Because it's all within the context of the covenant. It's not being irreverent. Quite the context. We live within the understanding that covenant is the dimension of our life. Faith becomes the mode of our existence, and our whole existence revolves around the Lord of the covenant. And at times we've got to wrestle with him, and we struggle with him. But that doesn't mean we have lost the faith or lost the plot. There's this remarkable honesty. And you see this particularly in the writings, within the covenant context. Here within the scriptures, these very scriptures that begin with the declarative affirmations of the Torah, with the proclamations of the prophets, then you get the wrestlings and the questions of the writings. Now, to take this a little bit further, we've got to also understand where Ecclesiastes fits in to the big plan of redemption. Because remember, this book, or this particular book of Ecclesiastes, is in the unfolding drama of God's redemptive purposes. So what has this book got to teach us that can create a deeper insight into redemption and into ultimate salvation? Well, let me put it to you this way, that you can never really understand Ecclesiastes without, first of all, appreciating the framework of creation a theology of creation. That's why we've got to go back to the beginning, to Bereshit, to Genesis. We've got to understand that from Genesis through, God has given us the big picture. And as we look at this big picture, well, look at it in several stages. You've got Act 1, creation. Act 2, you have got the catastrophic drama of rebellion, of dissolution, of defragment. Everything is fragmented. You have got sin, disruption. And like the volcanic cloud, that eruption is still living with us. That cloud is still over our world. How does God address that? Well, he takes the initiative and he begins Act 3 of the drama. He chooses one man, Abraham. Through one man, Abraham, one people, Israel. And through those particularities, he had a universal purpose. He chose the particular because he wanted to get a message out to the world. He never was purely nationalistic. He never was totally particularistic. He, on the one hand, was reaching the individual people and the individual person because he wanted to reveal something to the world. Act 3 came to a great climax when we came to Act 4. Jesus, the true Israel, son of Abraham, true Israel, steps onto the stage. And now, here we are, in 2011, we are on stage. We're part of the drama. So this is why, never kind of isolate yourself from what's gone before. We're fitting into this incredible drama that started. This is part of the big story. Now, and this is the question I sort of keep wanting to ask Christians today. How big is your picture? Are you seeing the scripture on widescreen with high definition? Or have we sort of come down to examine a little interlude? Because when we come to Ecclesiastes and we keep this big picture in mind, Ecclesiastes, Kohelet, is going to be a phenomenal help to us as we really want to be honest about trying to understand life in a fallen world. Life post Genesis 3. And Ecclesiastes is going to help us not only explore life under the curse, but life under the sun, which is simply a Hebraic expression to say everything. How are we going to understand everything under the sun? And what gives Ecclesiastes the edge is that as it prods us to look at life